Philadelphia. Hey, oh man. It came, it passed, and today is a new day. Um, I want to thank everyone that came out to support my first debut as an opportunity to preach in front of a congregation. Thank you so much for coming out. That day really opened up some thoughts for myself. And one of the thoughts um, that was open up was actually looking at it from the standpoint that for the past couple of years, so many people, I mean over 200 and plus people, have been associating me with being either a pastor, a bishop, or a minister. And for years and years, people have been associating me with one of those positions. And quite frankly, I never connected with their association. I could never see myself in any of those positions. And at first, when it started happening, I was taking it as an insult. Not that those positions are any form of an degrading or insult, but that's what I viewed it as, that you're complimenting me on something that I don't have an interest in. So that's what I viewed it as an insult. It was one day that someone actually shared with me that they're not looking at you as the position, they're just seeing the good that's in you. And that's how I started to really get a little understanding with it, but at the same time, I never connected with it. But this past Sunday, when I had the opportunity to preach, it actually made me started to connect to why people are actually calling me either a pastor, bishop, or minister. And I could tell you this from what happened on Sunday. People are tired of being lied to. People are tired of being deceived. People are tired of being in a bondage. And this is what I observed as I was there preaching. I could see the body language of the people based on the message that I was preaching. I could see their facial expression. That whatever was preaching was making sense, but they're now trying to figure out, okay, what is it that I was taught about this topic of tithes? And it's a topic that I never selected for myself. When pastor selected me and said, hey, in August you're gonna preach, he also selected the title. So my title was around tithes. And I could tell you this. If you never believe that there is more, more will never appear. If you never think that there's more, more will never appear. If you never ask for more, more will never appear. And this is my testimony. Because as soon as I was given that opportunity to preach and given the title, I began to pray to God and ask God for something different. Give me something more. Something that no one else is actually preaching about when it comes to the act of tithes. And based on what happened Sunday, I could tell that my prayer was answered. Which really made me really started to look into what I was talking about, the aspect of why people are associating me with one of these positions. As I said, people are tired of being lied to, people are tired of being deceived, and people are tired of being in bondage. The other thing that made me really think about something was the message was on tithes, right? And the message that I preached, it made me really think, do people really understand this act of tithes? And I could tell you that the average person right now that pays tithes can't really decipher or come to a full understanding of what tithing is all about. there's 10% of tithes that should be allocated, right? To give back. And ask the average person why 10%. They can't even tell you. Another thing that I really want to look at, because I took this from the book of Malachi 3, verse 10. So it's not something that I made up. The same book that everyone teaches from is the same book that I taught from. But I brought something different because that's what I prayed for. So the book of Malachi 3, verse 10, it tells you there's a principle, there's a law, there's a covenant that was made with God and we as the people. And the covenant, as Malachi 3:10 tells us, it says, if we bring the tithes, not tithe. So people would think that there's one form of tithing, then read the Bible carefully. In different books of the Bible, it says tithes. Tithes mean plural. Plural is an understanding that there's more than one, which is different from tithing. Tithing mean that you do it continuously. Tithes mean there's more than one form. So don't take my word for it. Just go in the book of Malachi 3:10 and other books of the Bible and it says tithes. So that's another thing. I did preach on that too. But it says if you bring the tithes in the storehouse, then God is going to prove himself as in someone who opens up windows of heaven in the form of a blessing. And the blessing is going to be so huge that the person doesn't have enough room to contain such blessing. So look at the average person right now who tithes on a weekly basis and show me that blessing that is in the form of this magnitude thing that you can't contain it. That's the principle that actually comes with Malachi 3 verse 10, not something that I made up. So you look at it, if we are paying tithes on a weekly basis, why aren't we seeing this form of blessing in our life? And my subtitle was around proving that you're tithing based on this principle, taken from Malachi 3 verse 10. So I also looked at the avenue, because as I said, this really made me started to think. So when it comes to tithes, the word that's synonymous with the word tithes is pay. You pay your tithes. So it really made me started to think. You pay your tithes. Not give, pay. That's the word that's used right now. So when you look at it now, you're looking at the aspect of, here in America, what do you pay? You pay bills and you pay taxes. So I started to look at it now, which one of these two does tithes fall in since we're paying it? And I look at it, okay, if it's a tax, then it's percentage. When you go to the store and you purchase an item, it comes with a tax. Certain items, it comes with a tax. And that tax is a percentage of the item that you're purchasing. When you work, taxes are taken out and it's a certain percentage. So when you talk about now paying your tax, you're talking about 10%. Really think about that. So are we doing an act of God or are we paying taxes? And the reason why I'm saying that, this is not something that I'm making up again. Let's go back to the Bible. Hebrews 7 verse 5, it tells you that those who are in the priesthood was commanded to make it a law that they take tithes from the average person or average people in the form of a tax. Go to the book of Hebrews 7 verse 5 and you see it for yourself. It was a commandment that was put in place that whosoever is in the priesthood position, quote unquote, a priest, they have it as the right to tax the people in the form of a tithe, which was the original concept of where tithing comes from. That whosoever is in the priesthood position, the priest, you would give a portion of what you had to them. Long story, but don't take my word for it. Go read your Bible and it will show you. So the act of what you're doing today when you say you pay tithes, you're actually paying taxes. Which is why you can't prove it as it the principle or the law or the covenant that God made with us in Malachi 3 verse 10. You can't prove it. That the opportunities have opened up so much for you by you bringing these things. You can't. Why? Because every week that you go to work and you work, it's based on your working that you're going to formulate some type of money to now contribute 10%. You work so you can pay your tithes, not because you paid your tithes and God blessed you. So for the entire year you're working and 10% of what you're working is actually going to go towards tithes. So did the principle work in your life? No. Because it says if you bring them, then what's going to happen? The windows of heaven is going to open up for you in the form of a blessing that you won't have enough room to receive it. So until you can show me that in your life, I'm just going to stick with it that you're paying taxes. And this is why you can't see the results of what, quote unquote, God put into place as the original concept of tithes, not what it was marginalized down to. So understand what I'm saying. There's the act of tithes which God created, but there's a marginalize of tithes which man created to marginalize it, that what you have to do is to bring money here and tithe in the house of God. And in the book, I can't recall what chapter it is, but I know in Acts, I think it's verse 17, 24, something around that part. It actually tell you where it was saying that everything belongs to God, but God doesn't belong to any house that was built with the hands. So if in Malachi 3 verse 10 it's saying bring the tithes into God's storehouse, and in Acts it's telling you that God doesn't belong to any house that is built with hands, then it can't be the church that's God's storehouse. These are something that you should think about. And as I said, after being in this such a position, it really made me started to think about these things. Really think about it. Just don't take my word for it of what I'm saying. Look in your life. If you're the average person that pays tithes on a weekly basis or monthly basis, show me the principle that works in your life. And I'm not talking about this form of principle, because there's another principle that says if you give you shall receive. That is they also equate that to cause and effect. So if you give something, you're going to get back something. Yes, that's natural. So some people may equate it, okay, I pay my tithes and I see, oh, I got a job. That's not the same of what Malachi 3 verse 10 is saying. It's saying that it's going to open up windows of heaven for you that you would not have enough room to receive it. So if you have, say, quote unquote, a job opportunity that's presented to you, or you have some extra stuff in your life that you consider the blessing from God because you paid your tithes. That's not what the book of Malachi 3 verse 10 is talking about. Those are things that you could actually just work and purchase on your own. You don't need God's blessing for that. So really think about it. Really think about it. As I said, these were things that presented themselves unto me after I was in such position to really start thinking about this act of tithing. Because if we're tithing monetary, then we shall receive monetary. And don't quote me on this. There may be more black churches than there is black businesses. And if we're tithing money after money after money, where we're saying God should give us an increase in what we're tithing, right? Then at some point we should see an overflow in our economy when it comes to the money. But we don't. So really think about it. Anyways, have a productive day, and I'm hoping that this is not the last time I was placed in such a position, because as I said, people are tired, they're frustrated, and they're tired of being in this bondage position where they are, where they can't see a blessing from God in their life. And I could tell you this, the average person that's paying tithes right now is struggling. Is struggling. I could give you 100 people right now off the top of my head that I know that are committed in paying tithes. And out of those 100 people, 100% of them are battling with paying their bills, with finding extra income. So think about it. Until then, God bless.